Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I am Charisma. Charisma Cares travels the world, and I am here with Miss Michelle. So, if you're new to the channel, on this channel, I talk about how I travel with my son with disabilities, and we travel worldwide. And we do so by investing in real estate. So I teach other women like you how to invest in real estate, whether that is multifamily apartment homes or single family homes. It's something that is definitely done remotely if you do it right. So even though I travel with my son, I needed a break sometimes. I can't, I need time to get away by myself and do a little bit of solo traveling. So today I brought Michelle on because that's what she does. She does solo traveling. She's been doing it for years. She's teaching the ins and outs, why she does it, how she does it, and how you can do it too, especially for people that have not taken their first trip and are afraid. So, Michelle, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Marchelle, and I am an avid international traveler. I started traveling about 14 years ago, internationally, exclusively. And, I was bitten by the bug, and it hasn't stopped since, and it just continues to increase. When I initially started, I was averaging one trip a year. And then I started focusing on how can I increase that. And I'm a firm believer. So, I prayed about it, I affirmed for it, and things just started happening where one turned into 2 times a year, and two sometimes averaged to 3 times a year. So now I try to stick with the between 2 and 3 times a year, because it just allows me a really great mental and emotional break from just life every day.
Yeah. Okay. So apologies, Marchelle. Uh, so what I found interesting about you is that you're not just doing like going to the Caribbean. You're going to Europe. You're tackling some of the bigger countries by yourself. You're navigating them. You're taking time out because, like, some of my viewers, they travel full time,
Mhm.
and then there's other ones that, of course, they still work, a 9 to 5, whether that's here in the States or that's remotely. So, how did you start? Like, what was that first trip that got you traveling solo? How did that go?
Well, everything has been sort of by happenstance. The initial trip I wanted to take was to China, and this was 14 years ago. And I wasn't looking to take the trip by myself. That wasn't how I started out traveling. So,
Mhm.
I asked a couple of friends, and you know how that goes. And so I had this one particular friend, I kept saying, hey, come on, do this trip with me. So she was a little afraid to travel internationally, and she didn't want to do China. So we kept kind of going around and around about where to go. And she was just, strongly against going to China. So I said, okay, where would you travel? She said, I'd go to Egypt. And I said, all right, yeah, I'd love to go to Egypt. Always wanted to see the pyramids. So we booked the trip like a year out. We had a year from the date we booked it. And I would say 5 months before we were actually supposed to go, a political uprising started in Egypt where they overthrew the leader.
Ah,
So in the initial week, the travel agency said, hey, we're watching things, we'll let you know, but you're free to change if you want to. And we watched it for a week or so, and then we said, you know what? I don't think this is going to get better in a few months. So we changed the trip to Greece. And that ended up being the trip that I was supposed to take. You don't always know where you're supposed to go. You have an idea in your mind, but what you end up doing is the place you needed to go at the time. And it ended up being one of the most beautiful, spiritually enlightening trips that I've ever taken. And it
And I
changed,
don't, go ahead.
and it changed me. When I came back, I knew I wanted a different way of living.
I don't hear that about Greece a lot, that is, spiritual and enlightening. Do you feel like that was something that you noticed in the atmosphere in the area of Greece, or you think that was just something that was more so in you?
Well, I'm a Christian and a firm believer. And at the time, I was very new in my faith walk. So when I got to Greece, I was discovering things that I had read about in the Bible, like going
Okay.
to the island of Patmos. If you've read the Bible, you know about Patmos, and you know about the cave that St. John lived in, his grotto. And you've read the part about where he talks about God spoke so loud that it cracked the ceiling of the cave. So I got to go into the grotto and I saw the crack, and I saw these things. And there's religion all around you in Greece. No matter where you go, there's churches, and we saw different priests walking the streets of different islands. So it was all of those things coming together. It was almost like bringing the Bible to life for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was fascinating. So that combined with what I was personally going through spiritually, and then experiencing it in the world, was just mind-blowing and life-changing.
Okay, so that I can see, because I know when I went to the Vatican, that was definitely I was raised Catholic because my family is from Central America. So, the Vatican was like that. But even when I go back to certain places, they're originally from Costa Rica, and in certain parts of Panama and Costa Rica, you can see that. In Panama, there's an area where it's only Black Panamanians, very dark, chocolate, beautiful skin. I mean, just gorgeous.
Mhm.
And it's the area in Cologne where they brought the slaves over.
Yes, yes.
So that's the area they brought the slaves over. And the story there is that they brought the king over as well. And they were so smart. The short story is that they basically used mirrors to communicate with the king in the prison. And what they would do is the women would sew up these garments, and they will put these then they will put these white garments on at night with their Black skin, and they would literally scare the colonizers. So they never colonized that area of Panama. That's why they still say Cologne, Panama is so bad, because
Yeah.
Cologne, Panama, and their beautiful water there, because the best beaches in Panama, is still owned by completely 100% African Panamanians.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. And then they have the original Black Jesus, and the original Black Jesus is draped in the color of royalty, purple. So you will see in one of the islands there, I forgot which one it was I visited. I was with one of my cousins, but in the middle of the ocean is a Black Jesus. And the story is that I think the Black Jesus fell into the ocean. And every time the colonizers would try to come, there will be a storm right there, because the Black Jesus protects the coast.
Mhm.
And every time they would try to come, there will be a storm, a hurricane. Their ships would get overturned. Since that Black Jesus has been there in that ocean, no colonizer was able to make it to shore.
Wow.
And they were very close to shore. You can see it, you could take a picture of it. It's not like it's way out, but like you said, it's those things that really hit home for you. They have one of the original, sorry, my dog is barking. They have one of the original churches with Black Jesus, and they tell you all about it. So, it's a beautiful thing when you can go to these countries, see things up front,
Yeah.
and really, connect to them and connect those dots, those things you read and experienced. So yeah, I mean, I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Was your friend with you on this trip?
Yeah, I traveled with a
Okay.
friend. I don't always travel solo, but it has become my preference in these later years to go solo. Um, and I don't mind sharing the adventure with others, but you learn that you can't travel with everyone. Everyone doesn't have the same level of passion or interests, even though
Yes.
they made the choice to come along, they don't tend to always, enjoy it or experience it similar to you.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can cause a little bit of, friction in
With
the dynamics. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it may be you're early riser, they're late riser. You're organized, you want to see certain things. They just kind of want to go with the flow.
Mhm.
Some people go on vacation, they just want to, they're a foodie, they just want to do the food. They don't want to do the tours. Uh yeah, yeah. That I mean, I think that's one of the things about traveling solo is you are free to do whatever it is that you want to do.
Yeah. When
Um, right, when you want to do it. Yeah. You're not held down to anybody else's timeline or anything. My first solo trip that wasn't connected to work, because I did a lot of work trips, but the first one that wasn't connected to work was St. Thomas. And I was going to St. John Island that day. And I had an alarm, I think. And I woke up and I was like, oh, it's time to get on the ferry. And I was like, but I'm so tired. And I looked to the left and I looked to the right. I said, girl, get out of here. What difference does it make if you don't get on this ferry? And I laid back down. And that was kind of my first,
yeah.
like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
My first solo trip was for milestone birthday. And I was going to Paris, and it wasn't intended to be a solo trip.
okay.
Friend had said, hey, we're going to go, I'm going to take you. Long story short, some things happened. He got into an accident and things just went left. So I was left like 2 weeks out wondering, what am I going to do? Am I going to try to continue to go? Can I find somebody else to go with me? At this time, my mind was not in the solo lane. So in the end, it just wasn't feasible for anyone else, especially I guess at that late date of scheduling. And night after night, I just mulled over, am I going to do it? I would go on Expedia, put together the package, hover over the buy button, and then go, I'll think about it. I'll deal with it tomorrow. And so finally I got to the day where I had no more tomorrows to consider it. It was either buy it now or not. And I decided to buy it. And I tell you, with all the fear and excitement went into hitting that buy button. And I was like, okay, well, I've pulled the trigger. What am I going to do now? So I went into this mode of just trying to prepare as much as I could. I learned as much as I could. I read up on things as much as I could. And when people would say, hey, what are you going to do for the birthday? And I said, I'm going to Paris. And they're like, who are you going with? I'm like, just myself. And they're like, oh man, I couldn't do that. And you have everybody's response was mostly, I couldn't do that. Or, you should find somebody to go. I had some people who were extremely excited and happy for me. My mom at the time, she was not excited about me going by myself.
Yep, that's about right.
Yeah, and I just had to say, look, I'm doing this. I'm doing this scared, but I'm doing this excited, and I don't have a plan B. This is I have to do this. And I tell you, from the moment I landed in Paris, I knew that it was life-changing. And at that point, everybody in my world was pretty much in trouble, because I was like, I can do this myself now. I don't need anybody. Yep. And this became preferable. And I was so excited. It was so liberating. to just kind of walk through the streets of Paris, finding my way, asking questions, getting lost, finding my way back, all on my own timeline, not worried about anybody else, whether they were having fun, whether they wanted to do and see what I wanted to do. And I stayed out. I'm the kind of person, like, I get up when the sun comes up, I hit the ground running, and I don't come back until pretty much everything is shutting down. So I like to just be out there. I don't have to be doing anything, but I'm like, I don't live here.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll ever get a chance to come back here. I've got to soak in as much as I can while I'm here. And that's what I want to do. I didn't come to spend my time in the hotel room unless it's absolutely necessary.
Right.
And as I've traveled, as time has gone on and I get older, there are times that I need a little break. But that's also better when I'm traveling solo, because I can be out and say, you know what, I think I'm going back to the hotel and take an hour or two nap, and then I'm going to come back out. And that doesn't disrupt anybody else's plans except mine. And quite honestly, it's not a disruption. It is the plan. So yeah, that trip ended up being the blessing that I needed to enjoy this part of what I enjoy doing in life.
So tell me a little bit about that Paris trip. What did you end up doing? Because a lot of people, Paris is known for pickpocketers. It's like, oh my goodness, you're going here solo. Isn't it dangerous? Oh my God, why would you do such a thing? You should wait on somebody else. Anything can happen to you. So tell me about that trip, like what you did and how did you deal with those whole it's dangerous, or if there's special things you purchase. Like I know I purchased a special purse when I went to Italy, like that type of thing.
I didn't purchase anything special. I did do a lot of research online, YouTube videos about scams, scammers, safety, things like that. There's so much information out there that you don't have to go far. You go to your laptop or your phone and just check out all these social media platforms we have. And so I knew what the running scams were. So when I ran into them, I just kept going. And I think when you travel, I'm a proponent for promoting female solo traveling, because so many women sit on the sidelines waiting all their lives for everything, waiting for the right mate, waiting to have children, waiting to buy the house, but they're waiting on someone else to do all those things. And the traveling part, I've seen so much lately in travel groups where women are talking about, I want to go, but I'm afraid my friend canceled at the last moment. What do I do? And it's just having the bravery to do it despite the circumstances that start happening all around you. So when I was walking through the streets of Paris, I was walking through there like I owned them, like I lived there. You don't make yourself a victim any more in another country than you do here at home. Just like you get up and you go to the store and you go to the mall, you carry yourself with confidence, like nothing is coming at me, but you are aware of your surroundings. You do the same thing when you land in another country. It's no different. It's really no different. And far as communication, I worried about that, but there was Google Translate. Everything is at your hand. Any issue you may have or think you might have traveling internationally, it's really at your fingertips. I was sitting in a restaurant, the first night I was there, and I ordered a burger and fries, okay, something real simple. And I wanted some ketchup. And the young lady didn't understand what I was saying. And so finally I was like, got it. Let me pull out my phone, and I, pull up Google Translate, and I said, typed in ketchup, and she was like, oui. She goes and gets the ketchup, problem solved. I didn't, it's learning how to travel outside of your comfort zone. And it challenged everything about my comfort zones. And I can proudly say that I walked through each one of those. I faced each one of those. Even when I got lost, I just kept walking. I just kept walking until I found maybe a hotel, which was something I had learned on one of my trips to actually in Greece. I had gotten lost, And I asked the woman if she knew how to get to the hotel I was trying to go back to. And she said, I don't know. She said, but there's a hotel up there on the corner. She said, pop in there, they'll be able to tell you. So if I got lost in Paris, I just popped into a hotel, because you're sure to find someone there who can speak your language. And so I used all these tips, and I hadn't been traveling, a lot of years at that point, but I used the tips that I had been learning along the way and things that I heard people say in other videos. And I just navigated it. One of the best things I did traveling solo for the first time is I booked a free walking tour.
I book those everywhere I go.
And it is probably one of the number one best advice I can give to somebody dropping into a country for the first time and, wanting to get yourself acclimated and a little more comfortable. And my tour was literally an hour after I landed. So I didn't even get a chance to go to my hotel. I got off the plane, got on the train. The group was meeting in front of Notre Dame. I got there literally 2 minutes before it was supposed to start. I walk up huffing and puffing, and they were like, oh, where are you from? I'm like, the US, literally just landed, still have my bag with me.
Luggage and all.
Yeah, but I travel light. That's another thing, another tip that I learned is like, travel light. You don't need all that stuff you're taking. Stop packing all the what ifs.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I did a whole lot of research for Paris. I learned about the scams, the things you could run into. People say, Parisians are rude. You might find one or two, depending on where you are and what you're trying to do. But the response isn't to be rude in return. It's like to understand that a lot of times travelers from other countries don't try to communicate with those who live there in their language. And how dare you expect them to speak your language? And that's what people get upset about. And then they're like, no, that still doesn't translate. Don't become the ugly American or the ugly traveler, So, I learned how to just pivot on those things. And every moment was an experience. And along the way, I would just kind of look up into things. It was almost like the universe was just sort of guiding my path. I'd be looking for the Louvre and boom, I'd look up and I was in front of the Louvre. And then I'd be looking for something else and boom, there I was right there, So at that point, I hadn't learned to use all the tools that I use today, but like I said, I looked up so many things and I was so prepared to find what I wanted to do. And I had my list of things that I wanted to do. I always have a list of must-sees, and the must-sees are things that I have to see in case I never, ever get a chance to come back. I'll be okay if I've seen these things. And I just started ticking them off my list. When I wanted to find something, it was a rainy night, I was out and I walked into a souvenir store and I said, hey, I'm trying to get to the Moulin Rouge. What train do I take? And he told me, boom, I went back out into the rain, followed the directions, got there, spent all of maybe 10 or 15 minutes in the area, took the pictures because it's kind of seedy around Moulin Rouge. It's a seedy area. It's all about like sex shops and sex shows and things like that. So it was pretty dark and characters looked seedy. So I was like, let me take my pictures and then get back on the train and get back to my hotel. So like I said, I was just very prepared. I had my list and every day I just said, okay, today, this is what I'm going to tackle. And I would get up determined and I just start my journey. And there were many helpful people along. I was never afraid to ask for help.
That's cool. I'm just taking some notes here. So I wanted to go back. I know you mentioned some different tips of solo travel, and I think you mentioned some really good ones. But, the fact that you said just act the way that you act, how you would at home. I was born in New York, raised in Atlanta. I feel like same way I was walk those streets is the same way I walk the streets when I travel overseas. And I think part of it is, even if you're nervous, just don't show that you're nervous.
Right.
Even if you're, you made a wrong turn, don't just show, oh my goodness, because if you look like a victim, you become a victim.
Absolutely.
You avoid the dark alleys the same way you would avoid the dark alleys when you're at home.
But if you happen to go down one, walk down like you intended to be on that alley.
Exactly. So you just do it with confidence.
Yeah.
And I found, like you said, that people are so nice. Italians, I think, have that same, they're not rude, they just have kind of a rough personality. But they say New Yorkers have the same thing. It's just like that kind of tough exterior. But what I found is once you start talking to people, all people are kind of the same. And when you do try to talk, at least try to talk their language, at least greet them in their language, they're, more likely to be helpful than if you come in there as the American, hear me roar. Nobody likes that entitled American.
Yes.
So I think those are some great tips. The purse that I travel with that I was mentioning, I think it's by Traveler. And it comes with like these hooks and things that you can put on, that you can do. You zip it and then there's a little hook. And what that does is prevent someone from pickpocketing, because they would actually have to do the hook. And crooks do go to the people where they see the opportunity. Absolutely. They're not going to go to the person that's a little more difficult. When I would ride the train in New York, you always wore your purse crossbody. You never wore your purse right here, and you kept it in front of you where you knew where it was at all times. Even when I was, where was I? I think I was in Rome, where I saw someone being pickpocketed, and she had her purse on her shoulder. It was open. It wasn't even zipped up, and she was taking the picture. And I mean, I guess I could have said something, but I'm not gonna say nothing. I don't know what happens when you're the whistleblower overseas. but it was a crime of opportunity. Your purse was unzipped. It was, open and ready to go. And sometimes I will do that in Atlanta where my purse is unzipped, which I really shouldn't. I'll be in Walmart and I'll have to remind myself, zip up your purse. But it's just those basic tips. Any other tips you could think of offhand?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, if you get lost, jump into the nearest hotel.
I love that one.
Women should always travel with data on their phones. I always recommend having an unlocked phone because it saves you so much money. When you get to the country you're traveling to, you can buy a SIM card. And I found that international data is way better than what we get at home. Quite honestly, we're being a little taken advantage of here. You get a plan where you're paying $90 a month and you get 8 gigabytes, of data. And if you go and play a couple of videos on YouTube or your streaming channels on your phone, you use up half your data within a day. And internationally, I can buy that same data and run that phone 24/7 for however many days I'm there, and it might use 2 gigabytes. So most, if you're not going to have an unlocked phone, make sure your provider offers international travel plan. Usually they run about $10 a day. So based on how many days you're going to be there, that's your budget of what your phone is going to cost you to use. That's why I like to have an unlocked phone, because I can drop into a country and pay 20 euros for a SIM card, and I can be there for, 4 to 7 days. And I've only paid 20 bucks, that's about 20 euros, maybe it's like $21, $22 US. But if I'm paying $10 a day and I'm there 4 days to 7 days, that's $40 to $70 that, I didn't have to spend. But some plans have free international texting and data, like T-Mobile. that, they offer a really good international
But
service to
they
customers.
still cap you on your data in
Yeah.
some countries. So it's good to have that SIM card.
Yeah. So if
Mhm.
you don't want to be restricted, and the good thing about having an international SIM card is that if you have to call somewhere in that country, that phone is already set up to do that. Unless
Yep.
you're a genius at making international calls from your phone with your data from the US or wherever you come from, that's going to be pretty difficult. And I found it very easy to call a tour, maybe that I was running late for, and asking for directions, or saying, can I get this done, or can I get that done? But, it's a direct connection to the country that I'm in. And so I don't have any communication problems. If I need to call back home, I just wait until I'm back in the hotel room and get on the Wi-Fi. So, or, make sure you have WhatsApp, because that's a great service, great free calling. It doesn't matter where you are. If you're connected to your people on WhatsApp, you just hit that call button and you're connected. And a lot of people don't tend to utilize these applications that we have in front of us. So, make sure you have WhatsApp on your phone if you don't want to buy data plan, or you're not going to be connected to Wi-Fi data while you're out and about. Just make sure you have that WhatsApp on your phone.
And Marchelle, let me interrupt you and add to that. A lot of people don't realize you can also get a Google Voice number. A
Mhm.
Google Voice number is actually free. It'll have your local area code, and it's used through data or Wi-Fi.
Mhm.
So what I do a lot of times, what I have is I have a local number that I use with T-Mobile, and then I have a Google Voice number. So
Mhm.
even if I don't have service, like even if I put in my international SIM card, now I have a dual SIM phone, so I can use both. But before, when I could only put in my international SIM card,
Mhm.
people knew to call me on my Google Voice number or WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And a lot of times for family, it's easier for them to call you on your Google Voice number because they can just dial that even if they're at work. It's like a regular
Right.
phone. It's just voice over IP. So you can use it with that data plan. So, you basically have three options. You have Google Voice, you have your international number, and you have WhatsApp, like you said.
Yeah. So, definitely making sure you stay in touch. I would meet women out and about touring, and, they're on their own. And I ran into a woman, I was in Venice, and she was trying to take a selfie, and she was an African American, and I knew she was a tourist. And so, I saw the bad selfie taking place. And as I passed her, and I kind of chuckled. And so I turned around and went back, and I said, "Excuse me." I said, "Would you like for me to, take your photo?" And she was just like, "It's okay."
Yeah,
And I
you're nervous.
yeah. And I said, "No," I said, "I understand how difficult it is, but you want a memory, So I said, I'm happy to take the picture." And she said, "Okay." So I take a few pictures of her on the bridge. And then I asked her, I said, "Are you traveling solo?" And she said, yes, she was by herself, but she was with a travel group. And I said, "Okay." And she said, "I'm trying to find my way back to the train station." She said, "Our guide gave us this map, but I've only been able to find one street." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, I'm actually headed to the train station." I said, "So you can walk with me if you like." And I said, and I started talking to her. I said, "Do you have Wi-Fi on your phone?" And she said, "Only in the hotel." I said, "Okay, that never helps you out in the streets of wherever you're traveling to. Always make sure you have that data going to help you." And I had discovered a new app, which I like to recommend to people. It's called GPS My City.
Yeah.
And if you're in a location, it has all the sites that you should see as a tourist. And you can click on the pin, and it maps your walk, and you just follow it. It speaks the directions, and you're just following it. So, I told her about that. I said, this way, a lot of times you won't have to spend money on tours. If you want to go see these things, you don't need to buy a package to go and see the Eiffel Tower. you know,
Right.
you can GPS my city yourself there, and then buy your own ticket to go up the lift if you want to, or buy your ticket to walk up the Eiffel Tower if that's what you prefer. But again, it eliminates the need for all of these other services that cost you additional money that you have to put into your budget for travel. So I'm
Yeah.
looking for ways to reduce that money, because I like my money to spend on things or to take those excursions that I can't do on my own.
Right. I know in Europe they do. I used Rick Steves for the Colosseum.
Okay. Yeah.
Rick Steves, he has all kinds of tours, but I
Yeah.
think he only does Europe, but
Yeah.
they're very, very detailed tours. He has a Facebook group. There's a Facebook group and everything. I don't know that it's his,
Yeah.
but it's people that use his tours. And I mean, he gave an excellent tour of the Colosseum.
I watch his videos before I travel anywhere in Europe. I'm always like,
Really?
oh, I've been watching Rick Steves for years. I'm fascinated by travel shows, food shows. I get inspired to go to places by watching these shows. Like one of my favorites right now is Somebody Feed Phil on Netflix.
Okay.
And Phil Rosenthal is a gentleman that created the show Everybody Loves Raymond.
Okay.
He's absolutely hilarious. And he's married to, if anybody watches the show, he's married to the woman who played Amy, a character on the show. And Everybody Loves Raymond is actually one of my favorite comedies.
I love it. Yeah.
So he has this show called Somebody Feed Phil. And he goes to these different countries, and he's a foodie. But in his trek to uncover new foods and to expose his viewers to it, he's also exposing you to the country. And he inspired me to want to travel to Portugal. So when I saw his episode on Portugal, I was like, I got to go to Portugal. It hadn't been in my top 10, but all of a sudden there it was. So a lot of times people will ask me, where's your next trip? And I said, I'm not sure yet. It hasn't revealed itself, because I could have one thing in mind and something else comes up. And then I'm like, I'm going there instead.
Okay. Okay. Hold on just a second. I had something pop up here. There we go. So it's always when you travel a location that reveals itself, or do you ever travel kind of based off going to off season and looking at the pricing? How does that go for you? Because I know, we're always trying to save money where we can.
Absolutely. Well, fortunately for me, I don't like to travel in the summer. So
Okay.
my travel is always off season, and it's always less tourism. It's less costly, and it can be cold, but I don't mind the cold. I'm
Okay.
like, prepare yourself, bring the right clothing, and you're okay. I just came back from Iceland in January, and when you say Iceland, people like, well, that already sounds cold. Then you go in the wintertime, and it's and my response is like, guess what? It's always winter there. Even when it's spring and summer, you're
right.
still getting snow. Everything doesn't melt away. The glaciers don't disappear in the ocean, and things like that. So it's always there. But again, I don't let outside commentary sort of dictate what I want to do and what I want to experience. If that's your opinion, hold strong to that. That's fine. But I don't let it seep into my experiences. And what you find really behind those comments is just fear of the unknown, fear on what it might be like, fear how they would cope, survive in the environment, how they would get around, participate. And Iceland turned out to be one of the most pivotal trips I've taken thus far in my life. And it was so calming. It was like the wind blowing through your mind. It was cleansing. And I can't wait to go back again.
Did you get to see the what is it? The
Northern Lights? Yeah.
Northern Lights.
Yeah.
So that's on my bucket list.
Yeah, people come there chasing them. And the thing about the Northern Lights, you have to go during the wintertime in Iceland to see them. because
Yeah.
you have more
Yeah.
daylight in the summer, and you have to have darkness. You have to have
Mhm.
a certain amount of hours of darkness for them to come, and you have to have the right weather. So what happens is people come, one night they say, oh, it's a good night to go see them, and you go and you can't find them, but they're not visible everywhere. So it's sort of like ghost hunters
Oh.
chasing after the northern lights. So there are areas that people go to. There's certain areas that you're more likely to see them. And I picked up, again, one of my tips for travelers solo is to join groups on Facebook that are in the place you want to go. So I found this group called
Yeah.
Tips, Iceland Travel Tips or something like that. And everybody in there was so helpful, and people were there. People were just getting back from there, and they were giving their opinions and all of their advice. So you get all of these tips, and you're so prepared when you go. If you're paying attention, you're so prepared. And there's apps to chase after the northern lights. If you're into that, mapping,
Wow.
if it's gonna be a good night, if the weather is good, where to go see them. And I just happened to see them really truly by accident. I was on a tour for the northern lights. We didn't find anything. Every other night, I was there for 5 days. Every other night, the tour was canceled because it was cloudy or overcast. And so actually the last night I was there, I'd gotten back to the hotel from a tour. We had been out for like 14 or 15 hours on this tour.
Mm.
And I decided to walk down to the shore that was downtown Reykjavik. And people in the group constantly said, hey, you can go down there and see them for free. We saw the northern lights down there. So I went down by the Sun Voyager sculpture that everybody knows about when you go there. And I saw people set up with their cameras and things. And it was kind of just like, watching for, waiting for fireworks. And so people were standing around, and I'm walking around. I was like, oh, I don't see anything happening. Maybe I'm not going to see the northern lights. And so as I'm walking further down the shore, I look up and I see this one cloud, and it looks like a bright light shining behind it. And I said, wow, something looks different about that cloud. I wonder what's going on. So I take my phone and I hold it up, and sure enough, I can see the northern lights.
Ah.
They weren't in this area, they weren't visible by just eyesight. You had to hold your camera up, or if you had a video camera or just a regular camera, you had to look through the camera lens to see the northern lights. And I just stood there fascinated by what was hidden to the naked eye that was happening in the sky. So I got to see them for free and at that moment. So yeah, I was lucky that I got to see them on my trip.
That's cool. I didn't know that. I thought, in my mind, I thought that once you went to Iceland, as long as you went during that time period, you would definitely see them.
Yeah.
So that's good to know. I heard, I think it was recently, this plane, the pilot, they flew past the northern lights, and the pilot turned around so the other side of the plane could see the northern lights as well.
Yeah,
I
that's
thought that was so cool.
absolutely an amazing event that happened. I couldn't imagine being on the plane and seeing that
Yes.
going on outside the window. Yeah, that's fascinating. That's probably a once in a lifetime thing happening, because
Right.
you've never seen a story about that happening before. So yeah, that was absolutely fascinating. And and the thing about the Northern Lights is, like, there is no guarantee. They have these tours, and so the tour people will tell you, like, okay, if you didn't see them on your trip this time, the ticket is good for 2 years. They're not giving any money back because you didn't see the
Wow.
lights. Yeah, they're like, the ticket is
That's
good
a
for 2
gimmick.
years. Yeah, so they keep their money, and it rolls over. So like if you're there Monday night through Friday, and you go Monday night and you don't see the lights, they're like, okay, well, we'll come back tomorrow, and Tuesday's canceled. And then they're like, we'll come back, the next day. Wednesday you go, you don't see anything. They're like, okay, come back Thursday. You just keep rolling over. And by the third night, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. If I don't see them this time, maybe I'll catch them next time.
Right. That's cool though. So what other countries have you been to solo?
I've gone to Rome. I've gone to Italy. I've done that solo and with people. Um, Paris, of course, Iceland. I usually do January trips by myself. That's my birthday month, so I go and celebrate me. Um,
Okay.
ooh, trying to run through the countries in my head, and I didn't think about. Uh, let me take a look at my wall and see if it
Okay. Okay.
bring anything. Prague. Yeah, I've gone to Prague by myself. Um,
So you frame a picture in every country you go to?
no, that would be why I wouldn't have enough wall.
That's
It'd
a
be
good problem.
yeah. No, I just, I take lots and lots of pictures when I'm in a country. And so when I decided to do my gallery wall, I just chose, some of my favorite shots.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I had one of my aunts, she has a huge wall. She has a travel room that she
yeah,
calls it. And she
yeah.
has a wall with this huge map. And they put a pin in every country they've been to. And I mean, she has a fair amount of pins up there. I'm really trying to get to those amounts, that amount of pins.
Yeah, my house is turned into sort of a travel museum. Like on one of the other walls, I have this wooden map. It's by this company called Enjoy the Wood that I found on Etsy, and they're really beautiful maps. And the wood is stained in different shades of brown, and you have to put this thing together yourself. So imagine putting up the countries and all those little islands.
Oh, wow.
So it took me like 3 hours to do it. And it probably takes less time if you just focus, but I would get tired and be like, okay, this is like
Right.
30 little islands to put up there. And you're looking at the diagram and you're trying to get them just right so it looks realistic. So, and then for one of my birthdays, my sister gave me a map, a framed world map where you put the pins in. So I have that. And and on my walls, I have artwork that I pick up in different countries. So kind of when you come into my home, it speaks to my passion. It's like
That's cool.
I can look at things and say, that's when I was in Chile, that's when I was in Spain, and yeah, and I'm trying not to make everything about travel. It is kind of hard because I love nothing but travel.
Yeah, that's cool. So your love is Europe.
Yes, I
Okay.
am Eurocentric.
Okay.
I've done the countries that I wanted to do in Africa. I went to Morocco, I went to Egypt, and that was pretty much, all I wanted to do. Uh,
Hmm.
a lot of people want to go to South Africa. It's never had a draw for me. I don't have
Hmm.
anything against it. It's just never had a draw for me.
Yeah.
But I'm not against going at some point, maybe with a group of friends to see it. My sister went for her honeymoon. She absolutely loved it, but it just hasn't made it into my top 10. And
Okay.
I constantly look for countries in Europe that I want to explore. Um, but I'm at this point now where I seem to be doing my repeats.
Yeah.
So, I've been to Italy now 4 times. I've been
Oh,
to
wow.
Prague twice. I've been to Paris twice. I've got to get back to Barcelona. And I've been to London twice. So there are cities that I definitely adore and could spend, endless time there. But there are other places I do still have left to explore in Europe. Like I'd like to get to Scotland. I've done Ireland, but Scotland I hear is just as beautiful to see. And I'd like to go to Jordan. Croatia is up there. Poland is up there. So there definitely still some things left. I do have interest in exploring some of Asia.
Okay.
I want to see things in China. I want to see the Great Wall. I want to see the Forbidden City. That's and the terracotta soldiers are just this thing I've just got to see in this lifetime.
Yeah.
I want to do Japan, but in my mind right now, that's the extent of Asia that I want to explore. Maybe Singapore, but I'm not too sure about it.
Okay.
I like to go to places where there are things to see. And I like in places where I feel like I'm in a history book. You know, every country has, you know, a metropolitan city. You know, some of the capitals are very metropolitan, but I like being in areas where I feel like I'm in the history book, things I've only ever seen in a book or watched on National Geographic when I was growing up as a kid. And, you know, and then I'm standing there, you know, when I saw the pyramids for the first time.
Yeah.
It took my breath away, you know.
It's something about just being up close and personal with all of these things you've read about, heard about, seen in a book, seen on TV, seen a documentary about, you know, it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
One of my favorite things to do is to watch things now of places that I've been. So I can say, oh, I've been there. Like one of my favorite shows is The Amazing Race. And I seem to think that everybody would know about The Amazing Race, but a lot of people don't. They're like, I'm like, you never watched The Amazing Race? I'm like, no, never heard of it. I'm like, oh my God, these people race around the world, you know, doing these little challenges, trying to be the last team standing to win $1 million. But it's not it's exciting to watch them do it. But for me, it's watching the places that they go to. And so now, I don't know how many seasons they've been around. Maybe it's been like 30 plus seasons. So I go back and I can binge watch it all the time from season 1 to the current season. And I look at the places that I've been and I'm like, oh, I was right there on that street. I was right there on that corner.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, that's the most amazing feeling, you know, to be able to experience it again, watching the show.
So I don't watch a lot of TV, but I'm going to have to look that up. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, check them out on Hulu.
Yes. Okay. Well, Marchelle, I'm so happy that you joined us today. What would you leave as the last words for ladies in particular that are interested in traveling solo and just have not done so yet?
Just go. Pack your bag and go. Don't ask for opinions and input because you're going to have people to sort of tear down your confidence and discourage you from going. And they're not necessarily doing it intentionally or to hurt you, but recognize that they are not able to see beyond, you know, that fear. They're not able to look into the globe of dreams. So, you know, hug them, kiss them, wish them well, and tell them you'll see them when you get back.
And I'm sure you are such an encouragement to so many other people.
Thank you. I try.
I thank you so much for talking with us today. If you like this episode, make sure you like, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell to get more episodes. Yeah, this was wonderful. So I will see you all later.
All right.
Ciao.